working after that little nigun break. Okay, today we're going to be learning about two very important categories of religious items. One of them is called, one category is Tashmishe Kedusha, items that are used for holy use. And the other one is Tashmishe Mitzvah, and those are items that are used for a mitzvah use, but they're not necessarily holy. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about the two categories, and then we're going to talk about what happens. Wait, can you repeat that again? Tashmishe Kedusha, those are items that are used for holy. So, for example, like a Torah scroll, a Torah scroll, or let's say the cover for a Torah scroll. Or the parochet that covers a holy ark. Those are all used for holy art. But let's say a lulav is not holy, but it's necessary for a mitzvah. So that's not Tashmishe Kedusha, but that's Tashmishe Mitzvah. Mitzvah would be like a tefillin bag too? No, because that's tefillin is a hoe, because tefillin has got, it's got parchment in it. Yeah, but the bag, it's the bag. No, but that is anything associated with an item that is holy. Okay. Anything associated with something which is holy is called Tashmishe Kedusha, and everything that is associated with an item used for a mitzvah that is not necessarily holy is called Tashmishe Mitzvah. So let's say we could have tefillin or a tefillin bag are Tashmishe Kedusha, because tefillin are holy. Okay. But tzitzit is, the God name doesn't appear at all in tzitzit. It's a commandment to wear tzitzit, but that's a Tashmishe Mitzvah, but not Tashmishe Kedusha. So you don't have to bury things? Oh, well, I can't tell you everything now. That's the whole point of our discussion. So we today are going to look at these two categories, Tashmishe Kedusha and Tashmishe Mitzvah, and we're going to look at what are the halachic requirements when a Tashmish Kedusha is no longer used and Tashmishe Mitzvah are no longer used. We're going to look at the Gemara and then the Shulchan Aruch and then various creative uses for holy items or mitzvah items that are no longer being used. That's part one, really very halachic. And then as a little treat, in part number two, we're going to do something that we often do not do and look at more of the idea, the conceptual idea of Tashmishe Kedusha and Tashmishe Mitzvah, and how the different halachot for these two categories reflect perhaps like a deeper way of looking at the idea of a mitzvah and a different way of looking at the idea of Kedusha. Is that clear to everybody? When we get there, I hope that'll be even clearer than it is now. So we're going to start now with the Gemara. Gemara is, the Gemara Megillah is what defines these two categories. We're going to define them, then we're going to look at the halachot for each one. We'll do it quickly because you're all sort of so eager to know what to do. So we're gonna go through it quick, Gedalia. Okay, it looks like this. It's source number one. It's Masechet Megillah, Daf Kaf Vav Amud Bet, page 26, second side. So it goes straight down to the point. Tashmishe Mitzvah. If you have an item that is used for a mitzvah, and then you stop using that item, nizrakin, you can throw it away. However, Tashmishe Kedusha, if you have an item that was used for a holy use, that nignazim, that gets put into a geniza. Okay, what are they? Now let's look at what the two categories are. Ve'elu hein Tashmishe Mitzvah. Here are some examples of Tashmishe Mitzvah. Items that were used for a mitzvah and therefore can be thrown away when you stop using them. A sukkah, so you're allowed to throw away the schach at the end of Sukkot. And if you have a temporary sukkah with wool, you don't keep the walls. There's no holiness in the walls of a sukkah. A lulav, but really all of the arba minim, they are all tashmishe mitzvah. There's no God's name on any of them. There's no holiness. I use them just in order to perform a mitzvah. Shofar, tzitzit. These are all examples of tashmishe mitzvah, items with which I perform a mitzvah, but there's no intrinsic holiness in these items. Let's go to the second category and then we'll go take answers. For Elohein tashmishe kedusha, delos kedmei sfarim, tefillin umezuzot, tikshel sefer Torah. If you have the like the contain, often a Sefer Torah comes in a cover. Sure. So the cover of a Sefer Torah, narratik shel tefillin, uritzu otehem, and likewise the straps of my tefillin, and the box that I keep the bayit that the tefillin go in. These are all called tashmishe kedusha. So you have something very, very interesting, really, to lechaded. To understand the difference between them. If I could have a pile over here of leather straps, it's just leather straps, and I can have a pile over here of woolen strings. These woolen strings were once tzitzit, and these leather straps were once wrapped around on tefillin. And I would think, there's a mitzvah to wear tzitzit, and there's a mitzvah to put on tefillin, right? So I might have thought that the leather straps and the woolen strings would be treated in a similar manner, but they're not. Why? Because you all know now, tefillin is a holy item. Tefillin is a holy item. We know that we have the first two paragraphs of the Shema and two other writings from the Torah. There's a piece of parchment that contains holy words in it, like a mezuzah. And therefore the straps around that tefillin are tashmishe kedusha. These straps were the straps with which I attached to myself a holy item. They are tashmishe kedusha, and therefore when you finish using them, they need to be put into the geniza. Because they've got, there's parchment, God's name, the Torah is all in the tefillin. But if we go back to our woolen strings of our tzitzit, on the other hand, so there's no tzitzit, it's a woolen, garment. In fact, it could be any old, nowadays, it's amazing. I've even seen white shirts for Shabbat where it's cut up on them, they've got tzitzit hanging on. It's just, if you wear a four-corner garment, then you need to attach these strings on the four corners of this garment, and that is tzitzit. It is tashmishe mitzvah. You follow like a hadassim and aravot, like a lulav. I use them for the mitzvah, but now the mitzvah's over, and that the Mishnah tells us, not the Mishnah, Gemara tells us, nizrakim. They can be thrown away. Is that clear to everybody? Joy, happiness.
So,
oh, Gedalia, you are such a gift.
Okay, so I'm going to use this like Hanukkah.
Yes.
And I have old tzitzit that I don't need.
Right.
Can I cut the tzitzit and use them as a wick?
Yes. Excellent. That's very good. I'm going to do something very unorthodox now. Unorthodox is a bit strong. But I want to, yes, Gedalia, I just want to show you that's an excellent idea. Look at this. Can we jump from source number 1 to source number 7? Source number 7 is a Mishnah in Masechet Sukkah. It's from the 5th parak of Masechet Sukkah.
Actually not. You cannot use old tzitzit to any other purpose. If you look in the source number 3, Shulchan Aruch,
yeah.
It said like אסור להשתמש בכם כגון לקשור בכם שום דבר.
No, we'll come to that.
Yeah.
That's when they are still attached, meaning tzitzit as tzitzit.
But if you material,
Yeah. Once you've taken the strings off the tzitzit.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's jump to source number 7. Source number 7 is from the 5th chapter of Masechet Sukkah. The 5th chapter of Masechet Sukkah talks about a big celebration that took place here in Jerusalem, just down the road from here. Isn't that amazing? Such an honor to be here. So, the celebration that took place on the Temple Mount, Simchat Beit HaShoeva, and they'd have these huge, I don't know if you've ever seen, like artist illustrations, they have these huge, like bowls containing oil, and they would light these big fires on the, like, on raised pillars in the Beit HaMikdash, and it would light up the whole of the old city. Now, the Mishnah describes, the 5th perek describes this celebration. And look at what they used for the wick. How did they make the fires? So the Mishnah tells us like this. Mibla'e michnesei chohanim. They would take the worn out priestly clothing, umehem yanehem hayu mafki'in uvahen hayu madlikim. V'lo hayta chatzer b'Yerushalayim she'ena me'ira me'or Beit HaShoeva. They would make wicks out of worn out clothing worn by the priests in the Beit HaMikdash. This is a perfect example of taking a mitzvah that I was initially used for purpose A and using that same item rather than just throwing it away, utilizing it for mitzvah B. You hear that?
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. I remember learning this Mishnah a long time ago. There's another very, very popular custom, but I didn't see any source for the custom, but I see that a lot of people do it. And there is a custom when you make your fire on Erev Pesach in order to burn your chometz. Do you know what people have the custom of burning? What do they use to fuel their fire?
Lulav.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The lulav, the edrog, well, not the edrog, but the lulav, hadassim, and aravot. All my hadassim, all my aravot, all my lulav that I used for Sukkot. So it's very similar to what you're saying.
Like we strike them, right? And then we throw them on top of the
Fire.
ark. And then...
Oh, yes, exactly. And then you take them down on Erev Pesach, or perhaps previously, but you take it, you use those, the left, the lulav, hadassim and aravot, and you use that as the fuel to burn your chometz, which is very, very similar, like also using an old mitzvah as my wicks to light my Hanukkah candles, is very similar to this idea that we saw in the Mishnah in Ketubot, and also what we see people do, practically they do it when they burn their Arba Minim.
So you said it's a Chabad thing?
It's always been a thing in our Chabad shul. I don't know if it's like...
A lot of people take the Aravot. You have the Arava, and they put it on top of the ark afterwards, on Hoshana Rabbah.
Yeah.
And there's some shuls that it stays there for many, many months.
Yeah, right.
And there are other shuls that, I don't know, I guess a cleaner gets rid of it. But some shuls do keep it, and then on Erev Pesach, they use those twigs as the fuel to burn their...
Well, it's effective, especially when you add in the dust collected on it. Makes it more flammable.
That's very good. Okay, so we just looked at the Gemara, the Gemara in Megillah. Let's go from there to the Mishneh Torah. So the Mishneh Torah talks about now Tashmishe Mitzvah. And he says like this, Mutar likanes b'tzitzit lebeit hakisei ulebeit hamerchaz. You're allowed to walk around, you're allowed to go to the bathroom, you're allowed to bring your tzitzit into a bathroom. In contrast with tefillin. Tefillin you're not allowed to enter into because it's a holy item. Tzitzit is a mitzvah item, but tefillin is a holy item. You follow?
And yet we don't bring Talit Gadol into the bathroom.
That is true. And that's also for practical reasons, I think.
I think it's first of all practical reasons. And I can remember, wasn't that in Brachot somewhere, about the wrapping up talit around your tefillin, if you have tefillin wrapping your arm, in order to enter the bathroom.
Could be.
Yeah, because I had a friend like 8 or 9 years ago. He was asking that question. Why do we enter the bathroom with a tzitzit katan but not the tzitzit gadol?
I think it's just practical. I don't think there's anything more than that. There's no reason, we see here, there's no reason not to, and it's a mitzvah item rather than a holy item. And mitzvah items you'll be allowed to. Okay. Now we're going to look at nifsaku bo chutei lavan or tchelet. Now what happens if your tzitzit become pasul, so you can't use them anymore? Zorko ba'ashpa mipnei shehi mitzvah she'ein bekufa kedusha. You are allowed to throw your tzitzit away because they are a mitzvah item rather than a holy item. However, that's even goes on to a separate point that you're not allowed to sell tzitzit, a talit, to a non-Jew unless you remove the tzitzit first. And it's not because of kedusha; it's just because you don't want. When we see somebody wearing tzitzit, you assume they're Jewish. So I would not give my clothing with tzitzit to somebody who is not Jewish, because then people might think this is a Jew, but he's not. You follow? In the olden days, don't forget, tzitzit wasn't a separate item of clothing. It was really, I would wear a cloak, and then I would put tzitzit on my cloak. So if I was selling my cloak, I would remove the tzitzit before selling it to somebody who's not Jewish. Is that clear to everybody? I remember when we were kids, and we used to buy arba minim before Sukkot, and you don't know if the seller, who the seller is. Are they religious? Are they not religious? And one of the rabbis in the shul said, just check if they're wearing tzitzit. Because tzitzit, if you see somebody who's wearing tzitzit, then this is one of this is somebody from within the community. You follow? So if I sell to somebody outside of the community, I should remove the tzitzit before I sell it.
Yeah, well, for Tashmisha Kedusha, you have to be even extra careful, like buying tefillin, even if they're religious.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Okay, so far so good. Joy. Now we're going to go to the Shulchan Aruch. On your point, we're going to go to the Shulchan Aruch, source number 3 on Tashmisha Mitzvah, source number 4 on Tashmisha Kedusha. So, source number 3 is within the laws of Tzitzit. Orach Chaim, Siman Kaf Aleph, Seif Aleph. And the Shulchan Aruch writes like this. Chutei Tzitzit. If I have the strings of tzitzit, shenifsaku, and then they you're ripped, yachol lezorkan ashpa mipnei shu mitzvah she'en bekufa kedusha. That is exactly what we saw from the Rambam. Aval kol zman she'em kvuim betalit asur lishtamesh behem kekol nikshor behem shum davar chiyot zevezeh mishum bitzui mitzvah. But as long as the strings are still serving as tzitzit, then you can't treat them, I can't use this string to tie something up. Yes?
I have a question. That's a really tricky one.
No, your questions are tricky.
This one is going to be like extra tricky.
Thank you. You're not helping, but yes.
Since we're learning Hilchot Tzitzit from Hilchot Sukkah, if I'm not mistaken.
In what way?
There is even sugya about that in Masechet Sukkah. So there's a lot of similarities, a lot of laws coming from Sukkah, and they are kind of like teleported to Tzitzit. And the question is following: if you have assigned the timber to construct Sukkah, which is per se timber, that's
right.
But you are not allowed to use it any other purpose. If you have assigned that, so is it how that goes in terms of the strings of tzitzit? You have assigned that to use as a part of the mitzvah, and can you use them even untied for any other purpose?
No, here we're talking about.
But I'm just like curious about what is the logic.
No, before, so there's a few interesting things about tzitzit. I don't know if any of you ever made tzitzit.
Yeah,
but
I make my own.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
So when you make tzitzit, often one of the strings might be longer than all the other strings. So you might want to cut it, right? But there's a problem with cutting it with metal, but it's only a problem to cut these strings if you've worn the tzitzit as and made a bracha on it. That after that you can't fiddle around as much. Same with, it's the same idea, but in a different context. Also with tefillin. So, you measure how much leather I need. Once I've put on the tefillin and made a blessing on the tefillin, then I can't shorten the leather. After you follow, so let's you go to a shop, you do it. How long does it need to be? You try put them on, and then it's a bit too long. That's fine. At that stage, I'm just trying on. I can cut it to make it down to size. But once you've put it on and you've made a bracha on it, you can't cut it down to size afterwards. So that's similar to what you're saying. So there is an idea that there is tweaking that you can do before. You can tweak things before you made a bracha, but once you made the bracha, you can't tweak it. But once it's designated for that particular purpose, I think you probably could not use it for a different purpose.
That's what I'm saying. So because it's just like at least appears quite illogical, because you have designated that for a particular purpose. Okay, they became wary, and for whatever reason you untie them. And so the question is, are you allowed to do that as well? I mean, to reuse them? And yes, we know the answer is yes, but I'm just like wondering why.
Why not? Why not though?
Again, do we have any kind of either reasoning behind that, or I don't know? No, definitely we don't have pasuk about that, but maybe.
I don't think it's a problem. I'm not sure why it would be a problem. That sounds fine to me.
Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering about what is the logic behind it. That's all my question.
I'm not sure if I fully understood. I think it's in general that tzitzit, the strings, once they're functioning as tzitzit, then I can't do something for anything else. But when they're not functioning, once they are retired from their function as tzitzit, then they can be thrown away. But you're asking what about beforehand?
No, afterwards.
Oh, so they've retired. They're retired.
But what I'm curious about is exactly the point. You untie them and they are retired. Let's use the word retired. It's a very nice word here. And why it is not the same approach as you mentioned? You cannot cut the leather strap once the blessing was done, or you cannot cut.
No, same thing. They're tefillin are different because that's tashmisha kedusha.
Yes,
but tzitzit is like a lulav. After I finish using my lulav, you can just. Yeah. It's I use it for a mitzvah, and its mitzvah use is now over.
With lulav is easier because you're done with the holidays. You're done.
No, but likewise here we say if the string gets torn, if I break the string, so then it's no longer tzitzit.
Right.
Just like after Sukkot, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
there's no So it's I think it's a parallel experience. One is fixed by a particular date, meaning there's no mitzvah to shake lulav once Sukkot is over.
Right.
And likewise, tzitzit, that I've ripped one of the strings, so then they're no longer suitable for using as tzitzit anymore. So both of them are now retired. You have a retired lulav or retired tzitzit. And they seem that the halach, we treat them in the same way halachically, and I think it makes sense that we do so. But we've just said, we quoted the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch quoted the Rambam saying that you're allowed to throw away the tzitzit. However, the Ramah disagrees, and he adds, V'yesh omrim, da'af la'achar shenifseku ein linhok bahem minhag bisayon, lezorkam b'makom meguna, ela she'enan tzrichim geniza. It's not that you can throw them away, it's just that they don't need geniza. But it doesn't mean you're allowed to throw tzitzit in the bin when you finish using them. Let me just finish what it says. V'yesh medaktekim legon zam v'amachmir v'hamedaktei b'mitzvot tavo alav bracha. And indeed, he quotes the Maharil who says that even though tzitzit do not require keniza, nevertheless, it is ideal to give tzitzit a proper... to put them in the geniza, yeah. And indeed, when I know we live near a shul that has a geniza in it, and it's always like, sometimes it's overflowing, I often see tzitzit there. people, even though it's not required, people tend not to throw away tzitzit, but do tend to put it in geniza, even though, strictly speaking, you shouldn't need to do that. That's the Shulchan Aruch. So the Shulchan Aruch quoted two positions. The first position, like the Rambam, and even based on the Gemara, is very, very clear that there is a distinction between a mitzvah and kedusha. Tefillin is holy, and therefore geniza. Tzitzit isn't holy, it's just strings at the end of a garment. I perform a mitzvah with it, which is fantastic, but it's not a holy object. You follow? God's name doesn't appear in it, there's no parchment. Does that make sense to you? Now, therefore, according to Rambam, you can throw it away. And that's indeed what he says. Efshal Zarkar, and the Shulchan Aruch follows that position. But the Ramah says there are other people, and he quotes the Ma'aril, who say best not to. If you can, it says you're not required to do geniza, but you still need to treat it with respect. So if I were to throw away my tzitzit, according to the Shulchan Aruch, I wouldn't throw them in the bin or the garbage, whatever you call it. I would put it into a bag in the garbage, but not directly in the garbage with all the other rubbish that's in there. Is that clear? Now I want to jump. I just realized I should have tweaked the order. We read the Shulchan Aruch in source number 3. I want to read the commentary on that piece that we just read in source number 5, which is the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan is Rabbi Yechiel Michal Epstein, who lived just over 100 years ago in Europe. Do you see, the word Shulchan Aruch is a set table, and Aruch HaShulchan is like it's a play on words. He's really, we were learning the Bet Yosef earlier. Like the Bet Yosef really, who sort of goes through the halachic discussion. The Aruch HaShulchan in many ways is like the halachic discussion after the Shulchan Aruch on whatever topic he's discussing. So on what we just mentioned, this comment of the Shulchan Aruch that says you can throw away tzitzit, and then we quoted the Ma'aril who said it's best not to throw away the tzitzit. So on that debate, can you throw them away like the Shulchan Aruch, or can you not throw them away like the Ma'aril? On that, the Aruch HaShulchan says, source number 5, V'li nir'ah, it seems to me, b'kavanato, T'mi'ikar adin katav ken. T'nehita amru chachamenu, t'tashmishay mitzvah nizrakim, eina kavana bizayon mamash. When it says you're allowed to throw things away, it doesn't really mean you're allowed to throw them away. Kamol zorkan lebeit hakiseh, you couldn't, don't throw them in the loo, and don't do, it's still an item that needs to be treated with respect. Like there's a difference between a geniza and garbage. You hear what I mean? Like there's a middle category. There's a container that's got all my eggshells and like all my vegetable peelings and all the leftover food. That's garbage. And then you have a geniza. But it's not either one or the other. What the Aruch HaShulchan is saying, that the fact that it doesn't need to be in here, in this holy sort of, like a container for worn out books that we spoke about at length a few weeks ago, the fact that it doesn't need to be in the geniza does not mean that it's allowed to be in the garbage. You follow? Is that clear to you? The fact that I don't need to put it in the geniza doesn't mean I'm allowed to throw it with all of my leftover rubbish.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I've seen an opinion that if you want to, for example, throw out tzitzit strings, of course you shouldn't put it in the trash, but one opinion said that you can put it into this, in the separate bag, to separate it from the trash itself, but it's still from...
Yes, exactly. Okay. That's exactly it. Here, Ella Kavana, this is exactly what he says. She'inam tzruchim geniza b'kavod k'tashmishay kedusha. So it doesn't, I'm not required to put tzitzit in the geniza with all my holy books. Ella b'lo kavod, aval gam lo derech bizayon. I still have to treat my tzitzit with respect. There's not just, there are three, exactly what you said, there are three categories. It's not that either it's holy or it's dirt. No, there's a difference between holy and dirt, and that is exactly where we look at the tzitzit. And for the tzitzit, I put them in a bag and then put the bag in the bin. Or you can even put it. He quotes the Shulchan Aruch quoted the Maharil, who says that people that put tzitzit into a geniza, tavo alav bracha, may they be praised. So you're certainly not allowed to put anything in the garbage. Exactly what Shmuel's saying. Nothing goes in the garbage. Holy items go in the geniza, and tashmishe mitzvah either in a bag in the bin, or ideally even they would also go in the geniza, as the Maharil suggested. Okay, is that clear? That's the Shulchan Aruch concerning tashmishe mitzvah. Now let's go to the Shulchan Aruch concerning tashmishe kedusha. Tashmishe kedusha kontik shel svarim, umezuzot, uretzuot tefillin, the straps of tefillin, va'argal shenotnim bo sefer Torah, or an ark, or chumash v'kisei shenotnim alav sefer Torah, vilon shetolin lifnei heichal, or the parochet. So all these things are tashmishe kedusha, the parochet in front of the ark, the mantle for the sefer Torah, the box, the bag that I put my tefillin in. These are all tashmishe kedusha. V'yesh b'hem kedusha v'tzarich leganazam. They are all holy items, and they all need to be put into the geniza. They all need to be put into the geniza. That is a Shulchan Aruch. V'haka, then the Ramah adds, v'davka hadavar shemenichim b'hem davar sheb'kedusha atzmo lefamim, או שנעשה לכבוד כגון המכסה שעל הקרשים של הספרים, אבל אותו מכסה שהוא לשמור אותו מכסה שעל הקרשים לא מקרי תשמישי, תביא תשמיש דתשמיש וכל כיוצא בזה. So the Shulchan Aruch says that let the mantle of the mantle of the Sefer Torah, it gets put into the geniza. The parochet, the curtain in front of the ark, that goes into the geniza. But he says depends how far you go back. You only go back one. So you have tefillin. So tefillin is a davar shebekdusha. The retzuot a davar shebekdusha. So if I put tefillin into a bag, so that would all go into the geniza. But if I would put the bag into another bag, because I keep everything, that's not davar shebekdusha. Davar shebekdusha is 1 degree of separation. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Like 1 degree of separation. So the item that covers the Sefer Torah, you follow everything that's 1 degree of separation away from holiness. But if something is 2 degrees of separation away from holiness, so the item that I put that holy item into, that second item is not holy. Is that clear to everybody?
That's an interesting case of parochet, actually. Because you have Sefer Torah, you have Aron HaKodesh, which is basically locked, and then you have parochet.
But sometimes you don't have sometimes that is right in front of the ark.
Right.
You're right. Nowadays, parochet maybe wouldn't need because it's 2 degrees of separation away. Maybe it could be like for symbolic reasons. I associate it with the ark. So technically, maybe you wouldn't need it, but in effect, people probably do treat it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I have very much ethical question. Sorry for derailing.
An ethical question.
Yes, ethical/halakhic question.
Okay.
So it happened to me once, travel in Poland, and visit some kind of flea market.
Okay. Sounds okay so far.
So far, now it's the best part.
Oh, see.
So there was plenty of Judaica there.
Okay.
And one of the things I found, it was a mantle from the Torah from my hometown.
Wow.
Before war.
Wow.
And the guy wanted to sell some crazy amount of money for that. It was very much torn and so. But you can clearly say this is the fake. And he wasn't Jewish, obviously. And me and a friend of mine, we just stopped by, and I was like, we were wondering what to do. Because on one hand, we don't want to leave the stuff there.
Right.
On the other hand, if we're going to pay for that,
Yeah.
It's meant to sustain his business, which is completely unethical.
Oh.
You can pay for
And
that.
and you know, and we were like completely torn apart, like a different separate opinions on that. So and it's still kind of like mind-boggling question to me.
Good question. Very, very good question.
Is it according
Thank
to
God
Shulchan
Shmuel's
Aruch-
got here. Yeah.
According to Shulchan Aruch, you can buy it from a non-Jew as long as the price is not higher than the price of a Jew.
Yeah, that's a good.
If it's
Yes.
more, you can convince him like peacefully that he should lower the price. If not, you're not obliged to buy it. But
Yeah.
you should buy from something Jewish from a non-Jew if it's not too.
Yeah, I like your. That's a very good resolution. Thank you, Shmuel. Meaning, if the cost is the value, then that's okay. But if he's asking something beyond the value, then it's trickier, because then you really are supporting some. Like you're almost encouraging unethical behavior. So assume you pay the correct price for whatever it
There's
is.
no thing a correct price.
I know,
nowadays,
that's another question, but I think I like that answer. Okay. We've looked at Tashmisha Mitzvah, Tashmisha Kedusha, this fascinating two categories of holy items, and the way we treat Tashmisha Mitzvah and the way we treat Tashmisha Kedusha. Everything is clear so far. Okay, I want to go now to the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah talks about tzitzit. We spoke about using the arba minim to burn my chometz. Some people also use a leftover, if you light on Hanukkah with oil, and then each day of Hanukkah you have like a wick. So people keep all the wicks from Hanukkah and burn that as well. Okay, but listen to this creative use of tzitzit. Do you remember the Maharil that we saw in the Shulchan Aruch in source number 3 was very reluctant to throw away tzitzit? So listen what he said. Katav Maharil, Deyaniach hatzitzit betoch hasefer lesiman or lasot bahem shum mitzvah tohoil ve'it avid behu mitzvah chada it avid behu acharita. So the Maharil says, the Maharil who just can't throw away holy, things that are used for a mitzvah. I should cut off, if I've tzitzit that are puzzle, cut them off and use it as a bookmark. And that's a beautiful way to maintain the holiness of a holy book. So then I'm of the holy item. So, the tzitzit, the mitzvah item. These strings were involved in allowing me to do a mitzvah. So let's take these same strings and allow them for me to do another mitzvah, which is even better than throwing it away. Is that clear to everybody? On just one final comment on this, I remember when I was a little boy, and on the last day of Sukkot, often people would buy their arba minim, and they would use them with great joy over the 7 days of Sukkot. But then often, at the end of the davening on Hoshana Rabbah, there was like a big bin bag, and everybody just would straight away, there was or sometimes wouldn't even, they would just throw away all their arba minim. And I found that, maybe that's what you need to do. No, not in a special bag, just like like there's a bin bag where people put tissues and other stuff. But on the way out of shul, it was just full of lulavim, and I found that quite sad. Even though there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but there's something about like preserving, and this idea. I very much like what the Maharil has to say. That was reluctant to throw away both Tashmisha Mitzvah and also Tashmisha Kedusha. So if we want to summarize these two categories, Tashmisha Kedusha, and that's a mezuzah case as well, and tefillin, and the straps for the tefillin, that's all for Geniza, Tashmisha Kedusha. Tashmisha Mitzvah, the Rambam, based on the Gemara, is very, very brief. You're allowed to throw it away. And then we see this idea of throwing away Tashmisha Mitzvah, Arba Minim, Tzitzit, Sukkah. We see in the Shulchan Aruch, particularly in the Maharil, and also after him, an effort to try to reduce that throwing away. Anyone that does put everything into Geniza tavo alav bracha is a valuable thing to do, but minimally, as Shmuel was saying, at least to put it in a bag, to throw in a respectful manner into the bin, rather than throwing it directly into the bin. Is that clear with everyone? Joy?
Happiness.
Excellent. Okay, with this we conclude part 1. Part 1 of our shiur, discussing the halachic significance of Tashmishe Mitzvah and Tashmishe Kedusha. Any questions at this exciting moment? Akol Baru?
It's just that, like a side note, it isn't even a question. I just need to investigate it further because I'm really curious. As we learned, they were using miknasayim and making wicks of them.
Yes.
Yeah, but this is interesting. In Mishnah B'mei Madlikin, they specifically say that we do not use pishtan, and these miknasayim were made of pishtan.
Yeah.
And then they say like we don't use pishtan, which is raw, which is.
That's all for Shabbos candles.
Yeah,
There's different laws for
no,
Shabbat
but
candles and
making
Chana.
Making wick as a person.
No, but there's lots of limitations on Shabbat candles that do not apply to Hanukkah candles.
Okay, yeah, I know that.
And this is another example there. But I think part of it is because my Hanukkah is really, it's a sign to, it's not for inside, it's for the world to see.
Mm.
But Shabbat candles, are there to enhance my Shabbat, it's bring beauty into my home. It has to be, don't have a smoky flame, don't have a dirty flame.
That's the purpose of B'mei Madlikin.
Yeah, exactly. It wants it to be. Yeah, I want it to be a beautiful flame to enhance my inside, to enhance my home for Shabbat. Therefore, B'mei Madlikin, that's why I read it then, is very limiting,
right,
much more limiting on Shabbat
than
on Hanukkah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, joy, happiness, everything clear? Okay, now I would like to look at two Hasidish interpretations of the idea of Tashmishe Kedusha, Tashmishe Mitzvah, source number 8 and source number 9. But in order to keep things interesting, we're going to start with source number 9 before source number 8, and we're going to learn from Pri Tzaddik. Pri Tzaddik was written by Rav Tzadok Cohn mi Lublin. So it's such a great honor to learn with people that grew up just a hop and a skip away from the home of the Pri Tzaddik.
I was studying there.
Wow!
For 5 years.
That's amazing.
University in the city. Yeah.
Wow.
And
So you've absorbed Lublin.
I observed Lublin a lot, and I absorbed my Lublin when I've been to.
Wow.
It's now a museum, but still.
Isn't it a yeshiva now? It's not
yeshiva anymore.
just empty.
Yeah. It's not empty. It's like in the building of the yeshiva itself. They made a really nice hotel, but they kept the synagogue part, the Beis Midrash part, and it serves occasionally as for prayer for everything. So,
How interesting.
And they made a museum into it, so you can visit a museum or attend to the service.
I see. Oh, yeah, fair. So, from Lublin comes Rav Tzadok Cohn mi Lublin. Listen what he says. This is very, very interesting. He compares two individuals. He compares Moshe Rabbeinu and Noach. And he talks about Noach as equivalent to Tashmishe Mitzvah and Moshe Rabbeinu as Tashmishe Kedusha. But look what he does. Very, very clever. Source number 9. Kamosh yesh chiluk. Just like we all know, there's a difference between Tashmishe Mitzvah, the Nizrakim, Tashmishe Nitzah are thrown away, as we saw in the Gemara and in the Rambam, and in the Shulchan Aruch. The Tashmishe Kedusha, the Nig Nazim. And Tashmishe Kedusha are put into a Geniza. And so too, you can distinguish between different types of people. There are people who in their Avodat Hashem are Tashmishe Mitzvah. Tashmishe Mitzvah are thrown away after you stop using them. Why is a Tashmish Mitzvah thrown away after you stop using it? Because there's nothing, it was, but didn't sustain itself. You hear what I mean by that? Meaning the holiness was there, but it's gone. It didn't hold on to whatever it had. But Tashmishe Kedusha are not thrown away. They go into the Geniza. Why? Because they somehow managed to hold on to whatever it is that they had. So now look at this. Noach, we know as Ish Tzadik Tamim, was a perfect righteous person, but Maseh mitzvot. He performed mitzvot. Ve'eno inyan kedusha, but he didn't achieve holiness. V'yuchal lered achar kach liyot nizra ki kedusha hu rak b'Yisrael shenikru goy kadosh v'am kadosh. As we know, he was a great man, but he came from a very high place before the flood, and as you know, he got drunk after the flood, and he started high, but at the end of his life, he fell. But why? You see, it's a very clever parallel to the idea of Tashmishay Mitzvah, meaning whatever they had, they don't hold on to it afterwards. So, let's say, do you remember right at the beginning, we were talking about my leather straps of my tefillin, and then the woolen strings of my tzitzit. And we said when the straps are taken off the tefillin, they hold on to something and they need to be put into a geniza. But the woolen strings from my tzitzit do not hold on to anything, and they can be thrown away afterwards. You hear? Do you remember we said that at the beginning? Why? Because somehow one of the straps hold on to their holiness, and the strings do not. And it's a bit like Noach reached greatness, but then immediately after the flood he fell down because he didn't hold on to whatever it is that he had. Compare that to Moshe Rabbeinu. Chaviv Moshe minoach, de Noach lo haya lo shaychut l'Torah. He was not connected to Torah. He was before Matan Torah. Lamadnu shelamad Noach Torah mikom makom lo haya lo shaychut lezeh, v'chein nitzaveh yom v'layla lo yishpetu, v'lo haya lo chelek b'Shabbat shu gam ken kedusha. He worked 7 days in the ark. Rak haya tzadik b'maseh. He was great in what he did, but it didn't enter him, and therefore it didn't last. Misha nikra ish tzadik nikra ish adama. He was a person, meaning he didn't elevate beyond action. He was just about action, but it didn't go further. Ma she'en ki Moshe Rabbeinu, kasher nolat nitmaleh habayit ora, the world filled with light, the home filled with light when he was born. Ora zo Torah, v'chochma kodesh ila'ah ikrai. וזכה להיות השבת מתנת חלקו, נכון? ואין מורידין, שבכל פעם מוסיף והולך בקדושה, וזה נקרא איש מצרי, נקרא איש האלוקים. He was called a man of God. ומשה רבינו היה שורש תורה שבכתב, וגלות מצרים הייתה הכנה למתן תורה. He was involved in Matan Torah. I'm going to stop there and want to explain a little bit what the Pri Tzaddik is saying. There seem to be two very interesting people. Noach, who did great things, but perhaps it was all on not superficial, but it didn't have a lasting effect on who he was. And Moshe Rabbeinu's actions came from a deeper place in his soul, and therefore that moment lasted in him forever. So you have the person who's very involved now, but there's no long-term ramifications, and that's like the Noach sort of service of God. And then you have a Moshe Rabbeinu sort of service of God, where my actions make a deep impression on the depths of my soul, and therefore I'm a changed person as a result. If we want to bring this to the Machon Meir experience, it's unlikely, I don't want to say terrible things, but it's most unlikely that we will still be learning here together, Be'ezrat Hashem, in 30 years from now. It's very possible, I don't want to say terrible things, but it's very possible that some of you may have left Machon Meir 30 years from now. No? Possibly. Huh? I hope not. Oh, God, you're such a... What? There's an optimist for you. Anyway.
I would be 81.
Okay, Be'ezrat Hashem, Ad 120. So we have what impression does it make? You follow? Tashmishay mitzvah, what Rav Tzodok Cohn is taking over here. Tashmishay mitzvah, like Noach is a person that, when I'm there, it's good, but as soon as I'm out, it's over. like tzitzit. It's holy, but as soon as you take the strings off the beged, so it's just a piece of string you can throw away, because it didn't impart holiness. It was there, but you take it off and then it's gone. As opposed to the leather straps of the tefillin, I take them off, but they've been connected to holiness. So when I take them off, they still maintain the holiness that they had previously. So the straps were connected to holiness, and therefore they maintain their holiness. But the strings were not attached to holiness, and therefore, as soon as you take them off the beged, they're just pieces of string, you can throw them away. And what the Pri Tzaddik is doing is taking it into people. There are people who experience life. Right now I'm good. How could I not be good? I'm living, as we say, in the palace of the king. Of course I'm good. Of course, because that's what life is, right? But at the end, am I going to be more like the straps of the tefillin, and it's going to make an impact on me for the rest of my life? Or am I more like the strings, in which case it's good now, it's a holy, I'm part of something, a mitzvah right now, but as soon as they untie me, I'm back to where I was beforehand. And the challenge is to see myself, to work towards the Moshe Rabbeinu model, which is more like Tashmishe Kedusha, and therefore the goodness has an impact on me forever, rather than to be like Tashmishe Mitzvah, where right now I'm involved, but as soon as you untie me, then I'm not connected anymore. Is that clear to everybody? So I want to bless us all, and with this we will conclude. I want to bless us all that we should learn to be like Tashmishe Kedusha, like Moshe Rabbeinu, and through that, Be'ezrat Hashem, the impact on us of the good that we do today will be with us ad mea ve'esrim. Yeshar koach lachem.